Hi, and welcome to the Human Side of Business podcast. I'm Ange MacCabe, CEO and co-founder of Intuity Performance. I'm a performance coach, HR professional, whole person leadership facilitator, and your host. The Human Side of Business podcast is fueled by the genuine curiosity to understand how personal characteristics and skills can be leveraged to drive individual and team performance, tangible outcomes, and ultimately organizational success within business. Each podcast is devoted to sharing knowledge, expanding our learning edges, and exploring the trends in corporate culture towards growing the emotional intelligence of organizations. I'm so glad you're here. Hi, and welcome to the Human Side of Business podcast. I'm Ange MacCabe, CEO and co-founder of Intuity Performance. I am a performance coach, HR professional, facilitator, and your host. The Human Side of Business podcast is fueled by the genuine curiosity to understand how personal characteristics and skills can be leveraged to drive individual and team performance, tangible outcomes, and ultimately organizational success within business. Each podcast is devoted to sharing knowledge, expanding our learning edges, and exploring the trends in corporate culture towards growing the emotional intelligence of organizations. I'm so glad you're here. Welcome back to the Human Side of Business, where we dig into the real, messy, and meaningful parts of work. I'm your host, Ange MacCabe, and today we're talking about something that affects every single one of us. Whether you're leading a team, managing yourself, or just trying to make it to Friday, we're talking about whole person performance. Specifically, how to balance productivity and personal growth without sacrificing one for the other. And joining me today is my friend, colleague, and Intuity consultant and coach, Maria Maycock. Welcome back.
Thank you. Always happy to be here. This is a conversation I think so many people need right now.
They do.
So I want to start at the beginning, as I usually always do. You know me, I'm all about context.
I think it's good. It's good. It sets us up for success.
I'm the context person. So this is really a methodology you created when your vision for Intuity began.
Yeah.
So when we say whole person performance, what do we mean?
That's a great question. Simply put, it's the idea that our performance at work isn't just about tasks, metrics, and deadlines. It's really about how we show up as full humans, our mindset, our behaviors, resiliency, our emotional intelligence, and our emotional well-being. Basically what we dub as what's in your backpack, right? And when we support people's whole selves, we get better, more sustainable performance over time. It's not just about productivity, it's about personal growth too, because we can't separate the person from the title.
No, you really can't. I think, and I know I've said this in countless episodes before, but I think we really saw this shift during COVID. And, you know, we were all just kind of scrambling to figure out how we marry our work life and our home life, because all of a sudden they became one.
Yes.
And that's kind of stuck ever since to some degree.
Yes.
So basically what you're saying is we're not robots.
That's correct. And I think, you know, from a place of just, I think that, you know, everyone remembers the news teleprompter where the cat walks over the keyboard. And that was almost like the ice-breaking moment of humanizing hybrid work.
Or the one where the kid busts through.
Yes.
And then the nanny like busts behind to grab the kid out. That's it in a nutshell.
To me, those are sparkle moments. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of workplaces are going back to the mindsets of everything else turns off when you step into the workplace or when you're online. And the reality is, you know, the better that we look at ourselves from a whole person perspective, the better we perform. And with that encompasses what I would call work-life integration or care.
Yeah.
You know, using the words balance, I always kind of poo-pooed on it
Yes.
in HR because that
imposes the fact that you're going to have some balance. And
that's the expectation that you can balance.
Right.
And so I don't remember, this isn't my line, but someone said to me years ago, you only have to balance things that are far apart. And so I think that just gives a good perspective of, yes, that is true. Our work, we treat our work as if it is totally far apart and separate from just here we are in our everyday life. But I think we're seeing more and more that isn't the case. Yeah.
And for our overperformers out there listening, also wanting to identify that integration also means it doesn't become your identity.
No.
Yeah. So when it comes to that self-care piece, for me, it's really like thinking about it from the perspective of car maintenance.
Yep.
If you ignore it, it's not going to perform effectively.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
You don't put gas in your car, what happens?
Yeah.
You don't sleep?
Yeah.
Same sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. You've answered this a bit, but why do you think this concept is important now more than ever?
Yeah. In past, when, I would say 10 years ago, we got into the quote unquote hustle culture. Who could work the most hours won the trophy.
Right.
And now it seems like we're in this space of innovation first. Who can be first to the finish line culture, which is almost like an evolution from hustle culture to me in my mind.
Yeah.
And when we're thinking about this, it's like back-to-back Zoom calls. It's making sure that you get deadlines done. It's working on the weekends because you didn't have enough time because you're working with your team members, and on and on and on we go. And on top of that, we have this new-ish layer of being tethered because we have email on our phones, we have text on our phones, regardless of if you're answering something or not, it grabs your attention and it will take mind space.
Yeah.
So you're not uncoupling from the workplace. Or I should say that's too general of a statement. I should say that most professionals have challenges with work-life integration because of the fact that you have to decouple and let go.
Yeah.
And it's a hard thing to do, right?
Yeah.
So because of this, moving forward, we're experiencing a lot of burnout in many industries. And, also thinking about it from the perspective of post-COVID, we're experiencing more of a necessity within that craving of growth and connectedness and purpose. And I don't mean this from like a place of warm, fuzzy slippers, but rather from a place of what am I doing with my time? Why does it matter? What can I add value to from that lens? And, we want to be productive, but also we don't want to lose ourselves in the process, I think is what I'm really trying to say here.
Totally.
And honestly, we know time and time again that businesses perform better when their people are thriving, not just grinding.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've seen it too. The turnover, the disengagement. It's not because people don't want to work. It's because the way we're now measuring success has become too narrow.
Absolutely. And I want to point to something, Maria, if it's okay.
Yeah.
Everyone, we were just having lunch in between recording podcasts, and Maria and I were talking, and we're both neurospicy, so we bounce around topics. And one thing that really hit me hard as a leader was one of the comments that you made over lunch of an observation from one of your friends. Can you share?
Yeah. So I guess, in the past year, I chose to overhaul my career, and in the spirit of what we're talking about today, productivity and personal growth. And one of my friends, almost every time that I see her, not much time passes when I do, but she always has, or lately has been commenting on the fact that she says that I'm glowing. And that's coming from a place of wellness for me, and I would say alignment, certainly personal growth, personal growth that then I would say fostered alignment with career trajectory. And then I would say I'm thinking about the word productivity, and I guess just from being on a more aligned path, I've just naturally felt more productive. And I guess perhaps being on a more aligned path has generally just meant, to go back to the glowing comment of physical and mental health.
Absolutely.
And wellness. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so there's multiple lenses to take from that perspective. It's like, you know, Maria's done more internal work.
Yeah.
Maria has identified what specifically does work-life integration look like for me.
Totally. Yeah.
In the sense of the working hours or location or what have you, as well as the actual work that she's doing. And what I thought was so beautiful about it is that you've been moving through this from a place of being so humble, and yet recognizing the fact that you, like, friends are recognizing the fact that you're literally glowing.
Yeah.
That is what I would want, obviously, for you, especially because we work so closely together, but also for everybody else.
Yeah.
You know, in the sense of who we work with. And, you know, to our listeners out there, it really strings back to what you had said, which I can't recall, but I thought was brilliant.
Like the alignment.
Yes.
Piece. Yeah. So I would say the personal growth led to, I guess, just greater alignment in the work that I was choosing. And then from the deeper alignment, the productivity piece just came more naturally. But yeah, I would say the personal growth piece, a big part of that was just finding alignment, and especially the work realm.
I think that's a great descriptor of like whole person performance, essentially.
I think so.
Or the whole person approach, because, you know, you have the personal Maria that is in doing work. You have the professional Maria is in doing work, and personal and professional are in alignment.
Yeah. And so much of, I think about, you know, when we approach our work with clients, so much of the time we take that baseline assessment of, you know, emotional intelligence and personality style. And that, I think, comes from, or comes in the spirit of, self-awareness, knowing where you are, so you can map something forward. You can actually have an eye on growth. So there's, I think, a component of the personal growth piece in whole person performance is knowing where you are, starting where you're at, knowing where you're at, and taking it from there, because it also doesn't look the same for everyone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what was coming up for me as well, because in some circumstances you may be quite content as to what you're doing, where you're at, and how you're doing it. And that is okay, like, to normalize it. Not everyone is out there diligently seeking like Maria does.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Totally.
Or intensely, I should say.
Intensely, yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about really the common struggle that we all have of productivity versus personal growth. There's this tension point. What are the biggest struggles people face in your mind when they try to balance productivity and personal growth? Like,
this is the one, as my grandmother would say, I know it gets your goat. I have no idea where that expression came from.
If anybody knows, tell us, please.
And please tell us. I have no idea. But the biggest one I hear, and I know it's your least favorite, is time. People feel like they don't have the time to slow down, reflect, or develop themselves because they're just too busy.
And I mean, if I'm taking like my hard ass Ange hat off, it's very natural to
Of
feel
course.
like it's just time because we're placed. We're in a place in society
Mhm.
where oftentimes we are on autopilot.
Yeah.
So time is a huge caveat. Now, if I put my growth mindset hat on, to me, for listeners out there, if your largest complaint is that I don't have time, my response to that is, what is it that you can do differently to ensure that you're filling your cup?
Yeah.
Right? Like
Mhm.
with regards to more of that integration between personal growth and productivity.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
what comes up for me is like oftentimes when we're working with clients, especially in the bioscience space
Mhm.
or biotech, it's like they are A players in their role
Yeah.
and then they're promoted to leadership and they could be in leadership for a year or 5 years.
Mhm.
And while working with them, we realized that there hasn't been that epiphany
Right.
as of yet that they have an opportunity to look at their role as a duality piece.
Mhm.
You know, in leading a team, it demands self-growth.
Definitely.
And
yeah.
if it's feeling sticky, then that's 9 times out of 10 the reason why.
Mhm.
Because there's some sort of leadership skill that's screaming at one
Mhm.
to pay attention to and then therefore grow
Yeah.
while they're doing their job and leading the team,
Totally.
you know?
Mhm. So I've mentioned this to you before, and we agree if the time isn't spent, we often rebut with, okay, if the time isn't spent here, then where else would you like to tack it on?
Mm-hmm.
Because if it's not spent on the personal growth piece,
Mm-hmm.
then professionally that might show up in you know, having to have more challenging conversations with
Yes.
the report. So,
Yes.
you know, it has the trickle down effect. And I think the other thing that comes up for me is I think we're both self-conscious of the words personal growth and it sounding soft. I think because we often talk so much about the soft skills and we know, I think the misconceptions around that, we want to maybe harden the language around personal growth or soft skills.
What I'm hearing is that it's not about the soft skills. It's about the fact that they're human skills. And those human skills track to what is needed for proper leadership and productivity.
Yeah.
And those two things go hand in hand with personal growth and productivity.
Yeah.
The other thing that comes up for me too, especially with innovative roles or companies, is there's the internal pressure or that narrative that you have to produce.
Yes.
And it's finding that integration, we'll use that word again, between what is actual production versus what is growth for production.
Right. Yeah.
I think that's what I was hearing.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Personal growth for production.
Mm-hmm. So basically what we're saying is short-term pain for long-term gain.
Totally. And personal growth, ideally for the sake of personal growth and just wellness. But if you find a barrier coming up for yourself in hearing the words personal growth, I guess know that it is personal growth ultimately for productivity when we're speaking in the context of workplace.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Mm-hmm.
Very much so.
Yeah. Thank you.
Of course. Of course.
Yeah. So there's the internal pressure, a narrative that if you're not producing, you're failing. How do we start shifting that?
I'm glad that you asked that question because we really are all about knowledge to action.
Exactly.
Right. And for us here at Intuitive Performance, we want to keep things simple.
Exactly.
Not adding oodles of quote unquote performance growth to your workload.
Because it's not about theory.
No.
It's not about knowing all the things. It's just how do we make this as actionable as possible?
the realization that I had, especially this year, working so close with, biotech, health tech, life sciences companies, is that it's how do you turn your scientific brain into an observer, or not an observer, but turn the scientific over to behavior, I guess, is the shortest way that I can say that.
Almost observational.
Observational, I think, creating your hypothesis with regards to how you're bridging those human skills with your technical skills.
Totally.
And so here's a quick tool that you can use, and it's all about just a really quick reflection at the end of your week. It could also be at the end of a project or sprint, phase, mode, what have you. And it's really designed to build self-awareness, uncover the small shifts. It's not about 0 to 100%.
Oh, yeah.
And really refine how you show up in your role. So you can write it down, you can use a voice recorder, think it through. The power really is about taking that pause of reflection.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And when I'm saying this, it's thinking about this model for a 10-minute stint.
Yeah.
So instead of, doing your 10-minute scroll as a break,
Totally.
take 10 minutes to reflect. And what we define that is the acronym REFINE.
Yeah.
And basically the R stands for recall. So what stood out most this week? It could be a win. It could be a mistake, a pattern, emotion, surprise, anything essentially with a signal.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? E is evaluate. So what supported my impact or productivity? What subtly blocked it maybe?
Yep.
So these are, thinking about from the perspective of tools, people, mindset, systems, distractions. F for focus. Where did my attention actually go this week versus where I wanted it to go?
Yeah.
So this is data, not judgment.
Yeah.
And that's a hard one to do, I must say. Like we could have a whole other episode about this, but I stands for iterate. What small behavior or habit or mindset could I adjust next week? So again, tiniest shift often creates the biggest ripple.
Yeah.
And for notice, what am I learning about? How do I work best right now in this season? And when I say season, it's not like literally, but it's in like that season of where you're at on your workplace journey. So this week's insight of self-observation. Then there's E for execute. So what's one micro commitment I want to carry into next week? Make it specific, doable, and meaningful.
Yeah, I think the key there is micro.
Yes.
Because again, we want quick wins.
Yes.
If you want to follow this framework and you want it to be successful, it needs to be quick wins so it takes over from the 10 minutes of scrolling versus 10 minutes of reflecting. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You named it. And it's about creating that positive habit. Also, this exercise can be built out for teams. So leaders can really facilitate a refined discussion with their team and can add the flavor of basically rotating the facilitator to build upon team communication. And plot twist.
Okay.
They can gamify how they facilitate through remote channels as well.
Yeah, of course.
It could be as simple as putting a poll in Slack.
Yeah.
Or, it could be as simple as having a popcorn discussion electronically or via video conference, that type of thing. If anyone's interested in applying this tool within their team for increased engagement and innovation, message us directly with your email address and send the refined tool to info@intuitiveperformance.com. We'll also have a link attached to this particular episode.
Perfect. Yeah. I'd also add in there to normalize rest.
Ooh, tell me more about this one.
If people don't feel safe taking time to recharge, your whole system will make you take the time.
Yes.
Yeah. And I mean, it is some folks might hear that and go, you know, perhaps my employer won't support that, but I don't know if you have any recommendations on like moments of rest, or maybe it's the 10 minutes with the refine tool.
I think you're onto something with saying moments.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I also think it's contextual in the sense
100%.
of, you know, where's the necessity of rest coming from? Is it self-driven? Is it corporately driven? And only you will be able to answer those questions.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, it could be taking micro breaks.
Right.
Just getting up and walking away from your desk, wherever that may be. Going out for lunch instead of eating lunch. What I've read or heard before is that if you literally have a change of architecture, like you visually see different architecture around you, it changes different patterns within your brain. And it gives you a sense of, you know, new information. Therefore, you're growing. Therefore, you're also taking a pause.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's like literal time.
Exactly.
Like, we have weekends for reasons. So at least take one day.
Yeah.
If not more, right? I definitely think that North America anyways has a lot of lessons that can be learned from our friends over in Europe with regards to culture shifts and productivity.
Totally. I think the saying that you can't pour from an empty cup is just so where we're at.
Yes.
So then it's like, okay, A, why is my cup empty? And then B, what fills my cup?
And then I would add C. Look at us riffing. I would add C. How do we figure out this integration?
Totally.
Because it's different for everyone.
And I think you touched on it earlier, which is like, I think we have to give ourselves some grace and let go of expectation that balance, like true balance, can be obtained. We live in a society where there are just so many demands.
Absolutely.
That there is an opportunity cost to everything. So I think letting go of the notion that all of the areas in your life are going to be balanced is a great first step. It was for me. And then my husband and I recently read a book called The Work-Life Balance Myth. And it basically challenges you to look at your life in buckets and the different segments of your life that you have. So it may be work, it may be personal, it may be leisure, it may be, you know, there's different categories. They're not all coming to me at the moment. But really, it's just challenging us to accept that full and complete balance isn't achievable. So look at the different segments of your life and know where your priority is or where you want your focus to be.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. That where my head is going with that is for our brilliant women out there listening, regardless of where you're at, taking pause also means understanding how you can integrate workloads throughout your cycles.
Oh, 100%. And that's the thing too, looking at your life. So if you choose to pick up the work-life balance myth, you're looking at these buckets and you're going, okay, maybe, you know, during this period of time, it's just straight up impossible for me to focus on this area of my life. So 100% agree. Just being realistic, acknowledging and accepting that A, balance and B, productivity in the typical form, maybe that we're used to talking about productivity in, just isn't possible. And that's okay.
And if I could be a bit vulnerable here, I'm really coming out of my shell lately.
Yeah.
What's going on? I don't know. I'm going to be vulnerable though. Here we go. What comes up for me is I deal with PMDD, which is like the ultimate extreme PMS symptoms. Yeah. So for a whole week, my memory is shot. I'm tired. I'm impatient. Inside of my mind is not a pretty place to be, and not so much towards others in my mind, but to myself.
Totally.
Like I just feel like I have a different character playing in my head.
Yeah.
That's not self-confidence. That's not, the quote unquote boss Ange.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
And so what I've adjusted to is truly scheduling speaking engagements outside of that week.
Absolutely.
I do no social podcasting or recording in that week. And just making sure that I don't have the guilt card that's attached to productivity was the hardest thing for me to do, to be totally honest about this, because I felt like I was less of a person or not good enough if I wasn't performing at 100% 30 days out of the month.
Exactly.
And it is so far from realism.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean, it's because lots of things are still productive.
Yes.
You're still functioning.
Yes.
It's just understanding that productivity is fluid and doesn't necessarily look one same way every day, every hour.
Right.
Which leads nicely into where I wanted to take you, which was talking about the myths. So we talked a bit about the myth of time. We don't have the time. But I know people are listening and thinking, this sounds nice, but my boss wants results. What would you add? Are there any myths that you would add that we haven't busted yet around time, or perhaps it just not personal growth not being a true part of productivity?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I believe the biggest myth really is that productivity and personal growth are competing priorities.
Oh, yeah. Like, absolutely. 100%. Yeah. That's even bigger than the time one.
I think so. And the reality is that they're not, because growth actually fuels better results. Right? So giving you a prime example here, we had a leader that we were coaching in past, and this was about, 3 years ago. High performer. However, they got caught a lot in what we call emotional drama, right? Yeah. So frustration levels were high, felt like employees weren't listening to their instructions, didn't understand why. At the end of the day, it was really speaking to their emotional regulation, as well as to understanding cause and effect in leadership. And so kind of geeking out on terms here, but essentially what I mean is that person had to slow down and realize that they would be more productive if they, quote unquote, did the hand holding and taught the person how to do the thing,
right? Versus
just simply, taking an authoritative approach and dictating.
Yeah.
Right.
The whole slowing down to speed up.
Yeah. And that's all it was. I mean, that leader was absolutely competent. Yeah. We're all competent. It's really coming down to the mindset pieces that allow us to flip those switches.
Yeah. You're moving intentionally, not reactively.
I like where you're going with that one too. So we talked about some of the myth busters. We talked about our thoughts.
Yep.
Our feelings. Shared some vulnerability stories, some business case even. What about like in real life? What could this look like in the workplace, Maria?
Totally. For us, I think it's often, it often comes up around burnout. So I worked with a team at the beginning of the year that was struggling with burnout. They were productive on paper, like we're saying, but turnover was high. We started introducing monthly check-ins focused only on personal development and workplace well-being. That was the only priority. A monthly check-in focused on those, quote, soft, ooey gooey things. And within 3 months, engagement scores, which is what we were targeting, improved. And one key team member who was about to leave decided to stay.
Wow. I don't think I heard that one.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Totally fell off my radar.
Yeah.
So help me understand that workplace well-being. So like, did you do jumping jacks with them or yoga or like what's that?
I think so. We started from a place of, speaking of whole person performance, getting everyone's baseline, understanding learning needs, personality needs, communication needs. And then, so I guess using the term workplace well-being more, perhaps maybe self-awareness.
Yeah.
Awareness in the workplace.
Yeah, definitely.
And then we really just jumped off from there. So using team coaching sessions just to then bring kind of what we've found individually together. But yeah, it started just from a place, I guess, of self-awareness. Yeah.
And hearing you, what comes up for me in the sense of the quote unquote well-being is that when you raise emotional intelligence skills like self-awareness, it decreases stress and increases your positive psychology.
Yeah.
Hence well-being.
Would you say that that's because it makes things more objective? You see it more objectively, I guess.
That's part of it.
Reactively.
Yeah, I definitely think that's part of it. I mean, there's that physical reaction and emotional reaction and to that. So like physical reaction, meaning like when we have less stress, we can feel pressure, which is okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the cortisol is at a normal level, which is not okay. Right?
Yeah.
Then there's the kind of emotional side of it where oftentimes what happens if we're under constant pressure and do not have that balance or stress along with low levels of or baseline, I should say, of self-awareness, then the negative Nellies come in.
Right.
Long story short.
Yeah.
Right. So higher levels of self-awareness equals higher levels of other emotional intelligence skills, which therefore equals more content.
Yeah.
Happiness, joy, type
regulation.
Feelings. Yes, very much so. I know talking about feelings to a lot of people sounds warm and fuzzy. To me, what it means is when we have those warm and fuzzy feels, whatever that may be to you as a listener out there, it means that your needs are being met, which is scientific at its core.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So essentially this story wrapped up in a bow, it's really what we mean when we say whole person performance. It's not soft, it's sustainable business strategy or
because your business strategy is made up of people.
Yes, you nailed it.
People are the delivery agent of your business strategy.
Yes, very much so. Very much so.
Yeah.
Okay, before we wrap up,
let's
give our listeners 3 clear takeaways.
Okay, here's what I'd say. Add if you feel inclined. Schedule reflection time. So using the refine method that you mentioned at the top. 2, leaders, make room for human conversation and connection. Ask your people how they're really doing. And 3, remember that sustainable performance is about rhythm, not constant hustle.
We're getting to the finish line first. Agreed.
Yeah.
I'd add one more.
Please.
I love all your 3, by the way. The 4th to me would be give yourself permission to grow while you perform. So it's not either or. It goes back to that 1% celebration, right?
Yeah. Grow while you perform, and then I guess maybe I'd add a 5th, which is, if you're a manager or a leader listening to this, is what are you doing to create the learning environment or the growth environment for your folks? So knowing and giving yourself permission to grow while you perform is well and good. There also needs to be a culture within the workplace that can support that.
Absolutely.
Call us if you need help with that. It's totally our jam.
Maria, thanks so much for this conversation. So grateful for it. I think we all needed the reminder that we're human first and employee second.
Totally. Yeah, always a pleasure. Thanks, Ange.
And to our listeners, if this resonated with you, share it with your team, your boss, or that one friend who's always burning the candle at both ends. Let's keep the conversation going about how we can build workplaces that work for humans. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.
Thanks for listening to the Human Side of Business podcast. I'm glad you could join us. If you enjoyed today's episode and want to stay updated with our latest content, make sure to visit our website. The link can be found in the episode description, where you can subscribe to the podcast, sign up for our newsletter, and learn more about our whole person leadership services. Sounds interesting? Explore the Whole Person Leadership Cohort by Intuitive Performance, a unique program that offers unparalleled support to managers on every step of their leadership journey. Our program features evidence-based assessments, workbooks, group coaching, and interactive learning experiences to help you level up your leadership skills. Reach out today to apply to one of our upcoming cohorts. Until next time, take care and stay curious. Thanks for listening to the Human Side of Business podcast. I'm glad you could join us. If you enjoyed today's episode and want to stay updated with our latest content, make sure to visit our website. The link can be found in the episode description, where you can subscribe to the podcast, sign up for our newsletter, and learn more about our whole person leadership services. Sounds interesting? Explore the Whole Person Leadership Cohort by Intuitive Performance, a unique program that offers unparalleled support to managers on every step of their leadership journey. Our program features evidence-based assessments, workbooks, group coaching, and interactive learning experiences to help you level up your leadership skills. Reach out today to apply to one of our upcoming cohorts. Until next time, take care and stay curious.